real estate makes up a large portion of lawsuits. The state of California is typically in the top 3 states across the nation that is the most litigated. And one of the items that is commonly litigated is real estate. Failing to disclose. Number 1 reason. The Inman Real Estate News for Realtors and real estate professionals failing to disclose the property defects. Disclosure is a tricky little animal, as you guys know. It's very tricky. It's not necessarily just the seller has to disclose what they know. So if I have information that may help to protect you as agents, I'm most certainly going to share it. Agents obviously are often targeted for that failing to disclose, right? Because, well, why didn't you know? Why didn't you tell me this and that and the other thing? And you may not know. So we're here, and hopefully this information will help to get that target off of your backs. Okay, and remember the title is How to Use the Inspection Process to Help Minimize Your Risk. Your clients need to educate themselves and utilize experts. Now, educate on what? This little book I gave you. California Association of Realtors has, I don't know how many documents pertaining to the inspection process for both buyers and sellers. There's a lot of choices in those documents for them to make. But if you, as an agent, are just going, this is that sign, this is that sign, this is that sign, and they're not actually reading and contributing, all right? Again, here's a layer of that protection, if you will, that if you actually, okay, this is your buyer's inspection election document. I want you to choose what inspections you want. Now, of course, they're going to ask you, well, what inspections do you think I need? And you, as an agent, of course, would steer them as best as you can and say, well, the general physical is the most common one, and we obviously want to have that one. But what about the other 3? Okay, are you going to wait for the general physical to say you should get a sewer line inspection? Because I guarantee you every general physical inspector in the state of California is going to say get a sewer line inspection because they can't tell you what's maybe going on with it. If the home has a fireplace and a chimney, 95% of the chimneys out there have issues occurring with them with it, whether structurally or fire safety. And if obviously the client has any concerns at all about moisture or mold, the general physical inspector not even supposed to talk about it. So those are the 4 most common that you can let them know. And then, of course, if they have, I'm concerned about radon, I get it. It can be a little bit difficult and tricky, but they still have to be educated on those, and they should be choosing them themselves. The statewide buyer-seller's advisory under buyer's rights and duties says you should conduct thorough investigations of the property, both personally and with appropriate professionals. Both personally. Now, this came from an actual California civil code. This is not just something that your car realtor or your car lawyers, attorneys, made up. This is actually coming from a California civil code. We're going to go into that in a little bit. That the buyer has a duty, a diligence, to actually inspect the property personally. You guys do your evids? Buyers should be doing their own buyer's inspection. I would ask buyers follow my inspectors around. My inspectors hate me because of that. Why do you tell them to follow me around? Because they should. Because they should learn about what they're buying. They should get involved in the process. Yes?
Yeah, one of the things that I was told as a new agent in the very beginning was, don't follow the inspector. You're going to upset them. Let them do their job and then talk to them afterwards. That way you're going to get into this.
Right.
It's true.
But we have so much information that's really, there's nowhere that anything is written that says what you should do. So when it says that they should inspect that property personally and with appropriate professionals, to me, that reads follow your inspector around. It just does. Ask questions, be involved. When I was an inspector, I bucked up against it too. Like, no, come on, let me do my job. But what I realized early on is, wait a second, who am I working for? I want this person involved. I want them, if they do have a problem, to call me and like me. I want them to be working out a problem with me potentially later on and using me again, maybe if they choose not to buy that particular property. So I'm not going to just, no, please don't. I'm going to actually hand them a tool that tests the electrical outlets. And I'm going to say, here, go test those electrical outlets for me. Plug that thing in. You get 2 yellow lights, we're good. You get a red light, let me know. Go operate some doors, open and close some windows, things like that. Get them involved. Absolutely. Absolutely. Measure out that master bedroom to determine the king-size bed, the 2 end tables, is it going to fit? So definitely get them involved. general physical inspector is a generalist. He or she is not a specialist necessarily in any one thing. They're a specialist in being a generalist. They're a general practitioner, like a doctor. So if you were to go to your general practitioner for your yearly checkup or whatnot, and you complained about an elbow issue, your general practitioner may go, you know what, I want you to see a specialist for your elbow. Now, if you don't, and then next year you're still complaining about your elbow issue, your generalist may look at you and go, well, I can't help you, I don't know what to do. So when the property inspector recommends further evaluation of a system or a component, have it done by that appropriate specialist. Because remember, the property inspector is looking at that thing as a general overview, getting a snapshot of what it looks like today at the time of the inspection. They are not predicting the future, and they're not suggesting what has happened in the past. But if they're looking at a plumbing system that has older, rusty pipes, and seems original, maybe some old galvanized pipes that are obviously affecting the water pressure, maybe a little rusty colored water coming out, and they recommend a plumber, get that done during the escrow period, because the plumber's going to come in and say, okay, yes, this, and this is how much it should cost to upgrade that or to fix those things. Yeah.
So recently I came across an inspection report that actually the inspector, it's not from LaRocca, it was someone else, that the inspector actually included the prices to fix certain items. How, I personally wouldn't accept it. To me, that's not acceptable unless you have a specialist really taking a look at that. How do you, is that true? Do you think they do hold some type of knowledge as to how much things are worth to repair?
Knowledge? Yes, they know. License to use that knowledge? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That should just remain to the professionals giving an actual estimate of what that may cost. Now, but I do want to bring up that, remember, we're talking about 4 inspection companies right now, at least mine: the general physical, sewer line, chimney, and mold. Those guys are specialists. It's a bit different. They don't fall under all of the guidelines that CREA sets, the California Real Estate Inspection Association sets forth. Those guys are specialists. They know the codes. They're looking at the item as a specialist. They may not be a licensed plumber, but they're a specialist in that inspection to that specific item. So they will oftentimes let your clients know approximately how much those items should cost to fix. But the general physical inspector, if asked, oftentimes my guys will say, well, I'm really not sure. You really should check with that professional. And it can go both ways. I've had agents and clients get upset that they don't answer. I've had agents and clients get upset that they do answer. So, case-by-case basis, right? But as a general rule, no, they shouldn't be doing that. Even if they're general contractors, we're going to get that into that here in a second. They shouldn't be wearing that hat as a general contractor when they're doing an inspection. And I'm sure you can probably think about what kind of trouble that could probably cause if you're going through a house with a general inspector and they're doing a home inspection for you on a real estate transaction. Further, you should read all written reports given to you and discuss those reports with the persons who prepared them. I was doing a presentation a few months back, and an agent told me that they always go over the report and tell their client what to do with the report, based on what the inspector says. And the client says, well, I'm confused. What does the inspector mean here? And the agent would then told me they would tell them what the inspector meant. That's just a potentially dangerous position to be in. You want to make sure that you're hiring inspectors that you're able to reach. I can pull up the report and I can help a client through any questions they have. So there's no reason not to get the inspector or someone who's representing the inspector involved to answer those questions, again, removing that target from your back. You guys all tracking with that? You are strongly advised to investigate the condition and suitability of all aspects of the property. If you do not do so, you are acting against the advice of brokers. All right, now where do you think the advice of brokers comes from? They're attorneys. California Association of Realtors, attorneys write the documents. Brokers go, okay, teach you agents and so forth and so on. So let's get them actually inspecting their properties. How about sellers' rights and duties? You have a duty to disclose material facts known to you that affect the value or desirability of the property. Now again, as we open this presentation, disclosures is a tricky little animal. because they're material facts known to you. So someone who has lived in this house for 35, 40 years may not know they have, let's say they burn a fire in their fireplace practically every evening, or at least, during the cooler months of the time to heat the house. And they have had great success with that because the house has never caught on fire. Don't want to be alarming, but I'm just saying that that's their experience. So now they have a chimney inspector that comes in and says, yeah, that's damaged. There's a fire safety risk here. And then, of course, the seller says, whoa, that's impossible. I've been living here for 30 years. I've been using it all the time, and my house is still standing here. True enough. That is true, but that nonetheless doesn't mean that there is an issue. So until you have that inspection to truly determine what its condition is, just based off of using it, you don't necessarily know. Every house is standing right now, and most houses in Southern California have termites. That doesn't mean we don't do anything about them. You are obligated to make the property available to the buyer and have the utilities on for inspections as allowed by the agreement. How many of you have shown up to an inspection with your buyer and the gas is off, the electricity is off, the water is off? All right, we don't need to go into that in too much great detail, but I'm sure you can kind of figure out what we can't tell the client. We can't see if they have hot water. Something as simple as that. Do you have hot water if the gas is off? We can't tell if the heating and air conditioning systems are working. We can't simply say you have hot on the, when you walk up to your faucet and you turn the right side, what comes out? Cold, thank you. Left side. Left side hot, right. Cold on the right, left on the left side's hot water. We can't tell you something simple as that. We can't go up to the toilet tank and put our hand on it and go, whoops, somebody piped hot water to the toilet, which happens all the time. Because without the gas on, there's no hot water in the water heater, so everything's going to come across as cold. Seller's duties. Ready? Boom. So let's make sure the utilities are on so that we can actually inspect all of those things. If the electricity is off, forget about it. Literally, just go away, come back another day. There's just nothing that we can do if the electricity is off. With our newer water heaters that are electrically fired and so forth and so on, we couldn't even tell you if you had hot water if the electricity's off. So it's not a good thing. Make spaces accessible for inspection. This is a common one. Okay, and when we say make spaces available, those stored items in the closet, we can't remove them. We can't tell our client what's going on in the closet. And if that client has an attic access, we may not be going into the attic. So it's very important at the beginning of this to work with your listing agents and so forth and so on and your sellers to make those spaces available. Those areas under the cabinets, the kitchen sinks. Now, granted, just a normal amount of stored items is fine. We'll move them around, shift them, get the flashlight, whatnot. But I've seen some kitchen sinks where you can't even see the inside of the cabinet, just packed. A common one here is a garage. The seller's selling. They're getting ready to move. They pack up all their things and they move it into the garage. All right. Per the law and the California Real Estate Inspection Association standards of practice, a real estate inspection is designed for the habitable structure and its primary parking structure. So we're there to inspect the garage as well, and if we can't get inside of it to see it, we can't inspect it. Other seller's duties. All pets are secured for you dog lovers in the world.
You have a question?
Yes.
So have you guys had any lawsuits in terms of spaces that weren't able to be inspected where there was a problem found after close?
I've never had a lawsuit regarding that. I've had complaints. I've had a buyer call and say, hey, your inspector didn't tell me that I had mold in my garage. And then I send them the picture that we took at the day of the inspection with, letting them know that there's no way we could have. And it's also possible that nobody knew because it's just full of packed items. So that is the issue, is that there are maybe things that can't be discovered at the time of the inspection, that when too many stored items are there, we can't see. It's a visual inspection.
And then you guys are fully protected in that manner?
All of my guys carry $1 million in errors and omissions insurance. We are fully protected. My insurance company wouldn't even pay out on something like that.
Yeah.
That's not, again, if the parameters for the inspection are correct, all areas are accessible, and my inspector missed that or missed a major condition, then of course errors and omissions comes to play.
Yeah.
But that would be considered a concealed or latent condition that they wouldn't do anything about. Yes?
So, one of the properties that go ahead.
Come on, join me.
Hello,
Let's enjoy this.
Hey.
I think you should have answered it. We all would have said hello.
It wasn't even the phone, it was just music.
Oh, was it?
My phone is off.
That's totally fine. Yeah, it's concealed. It's concealed. It sounds like a seller failed to disclose something right there. I mean, who put the painting there? So it does sound like a seller's disclosure. But see, this is important information to know, right? To make sure your client does understand that if the home comes with an art gallery and the art is not being removed, the entire wall areas are not going to be able to be inspected. We are not going to be removing them. Now, is it reasonable for you to ask your seller to vacate the house and get everything out? I don't know. It's up to you. I don't necessarily think so. There's many vacant houses that, are either... What do we do with vacant houses to sell them? We stage them. It's like these beautiful open spaces for my inspector to see everything, and we put a couch up against the wall. So it's those things that are just... These are sort of reasonable, things that your buyers are going to deal with, You could definitely go way overboard, just like... All right, everything has to come to the middle of the room for the inspector and then push it back out. It doesn't work that way. Not in real life. John LaRocca had a great... I'm sorry, go ahead.
So sorry. Yeah, I had a case that there was a room with a dog, with a fence that, we couldn't get into that room.
Yeah.
So the owner is very sensitive to his pet. So what can I do in that case, for the inspection to be done?
I believe you could request that the owner were to take his dog to a dog park or out for a walk for 15 minutes while the inspector inspected that area. It really is. In my world, and I'm sure yours, success is brought about by good communication, lots of it, and continued communication. So just request and communicate what it is that you need so that you can serve your client, to the best of your ability. And that's by having all the areas inspected. And if there's a dog that is not allowing the inspector to come in there, the seller is obligated to make all areas of the property available.
I guess communication beforehand would make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. That's what I was saying before. Working with your listing agents and your sellers. The garage, is it able to be viewed? The stored cabinets, can we get to the attic access? Things like that. Will we have all keys available? All of that is actually in the back of this book. There is a guide to your inspection setup checklist, inspection preparation checklist. So it goes over all of those things too that will help you and your clients. John LaRocca's got a great story about pets. He was doing an inspection and he showed up in the morning, and the seller went to John and said, "Hey, my dog's in that back bedroom.
Yeah.
Don't let my dog out."
Exactly.
Yeah. And John was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I want that responsibility. There's a lot of people here." But he was like, "Well, you're the one that's going to be milling about. They're all sitting at the breakfast table, chatting, and you got to make sure my dog doesn't get out." So John, of course, being John, says, "Okay, sure, no problem." Sure enough, the end of the inspection comes, and somebody says, "Hey, John, the dog's not here." The seller went off to work, and John, the dog's out. And John's like, "Oh, no." So he goes out into the neighborhood, gets the dog, brings the dog back in, puts him back in the bedroom, closes the door. Okay, everybody's good. 9 o'clock that night, John LaRocca got a phone call on his cell phone from the seller saying, "Hey, John, where's my dog, and why is my neighbor's dog in my house?" So John was trying to do the right thing, and he got the wrong dog. So, of course, John's failing was not actually going and opening the door of dog and introducing himself to the dog to see that, oh, well, that's a German Shepherd, and the one I brought here was a Golden Lab. He would have known. To continue with this particular statewide buyer sellers advisory, brokers' rights and duties. You have the duty, brokers do not have expertise in all areas of matters affecting the property or your evaluation of it. In other words, your buyer. Okay, so be the expert realtor. Let the buyer be the expert buyer or the new buyer, asking lots of questions, reading lots of information, but let the inspector be the expert inspector as well. I have run into agents who actually thought they were better inspectors than the home inspector who's been doing it for 15 years. You know, well, I've been doing this for 15 years. Doing what for 15 years? Sitting at the breakfast table during an inspection for 15 years? Okay, yes, you can definitely pick up some information. You get the general idea of what's happening. But have you crawled under the house 15 years in a row? Gone to the attic 15 years? No. So let the inspector be the inspector. You guys be the realtors. Obviously, this one is your ADVID. You guys are obligated to do your ADVID. Now, when you've heard this, I'm sure, in minimizing risk classes. When you see a stain on the ceiling, what do you say?
Stain on the ceiling.
Ding, bingo. Stain on the ceiling, right? Well, oh, God, the roof must be leaking. No, it's a stain on the ceiling. We've discovered stains on the ceiling that they had thought were, roof leaks, and later disclosed and determined that it was champagne from years prior when they popped a bottle of champagne and sprayed all over the ceiling. So you just don't know. You don't know. Try not to be too descriptive. If you're operating a door and it sticks, say the door sticks when operating. Don't say the door sticks a little. Why? In most houses, what happens in the summer, everything gets hot and it shrinks. In the winter, when it's damp and wet, everything swells up. So that door that's sticking a little bit in the summer may actually not even work in the winter. It might be really difficult. So just say it sticks. And even better yet, I would take my buyer over to it and have them experience it for themselves. Because that way they can't actually call you and say, hey, you didn't tell me my door stuck this badly, I can't even open it. Had they operated it themselves when you discovered it, they now have total duplication of what the actual condition was. If brokers give a referral to another professional, brokers do not guarantee that person's performance. Very, very important. If you suggest to use my company, okay, which I would never suggest that you do that. I would suggest that you say, well, yeah, here's 3-4 companies. I've had good success with this one, that one, whatever. Please investigate and use whoever you'd like. But if you, as brokers, realtors, give someone as a referral, they should also know that if there's an issue with that referral that you're giving, they need to contact that referral. If they have an issue with one of my inspectors, they need to contact me, not come to you and say, hey, that inspector I didn't like him. They contact me so that we can work it out. Remember, we have a contract. You have a contract, right? Your RPA with your client. We have a contract with that client. So we have obligations and they have obligations as well. Please, 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 please refer to experts. If they need to be referred to their mother, refer them to their mother. If they need an electrician, they need an electrician. Don't refer them to their mother if they need an electrician. You get the point? All right? It's like even a handyman. There are wonderful handymen, and absolutely there's a lot of things handymen can do very, very, very well. But if you are upgrading your entire electrical system, I would recommend not to hire a handyman. Okay, there's no license to be a handyman. Hire someone who is accredited, carries the proper insurances, has the proper licensing, so forth and so on. Refer to the documents. Typically, I try to operate where I don't answer questions. I will normally, like if someone comes into my office and knocks on my door, hey, Chris, what, blah, 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 asks me a question, I will normally spin to my computer, open up all of my policies, print out a policy, and say, there's your answer. Or I will normally refer them to the document that has the answer. So if the buyer asks you, hey, should I have a mold inspection? What document do you think you should refer them to? Go ahead, speak up if you know the answer.
The agent advisory.
Okay, good. You have those card documents, right? There's one particular one, which is
We actually have a mold.
Right, there's a mold advisory. There is the statewide buyer-sellers advisory, and it was item 5 a couple of years ago. They revised it, and I think it's item 6 this year or whatnot. But it actually says what they should do about mold. What they should do about mold. It's their choice. I would never tell your client, no, don't worry about mold. There's mold everywhere. That's a true statement. There's mold everywhere. But for them to tell them not to worry about it could get you in a little trouble. Work with them, have them speak to an expert, so forth and so on. How can you effectively manage the inspection process to help ensure a successful transaction? There are many realtors. I tell you what, when I started in this industry, I would go to some of our trade shows, events. I'd see inspectors walking around with a big, deal and then a circle and an X through this deal. So I want to apologize for all those inspectors out there who basically have made this picture that we are there to kill deals. Because that was wrong when it began. I looked at that and I was like, what are you guys doing? That is such the wrong attitude, right? We're there to help move things forward. We're there to have resolve, to help you and your clients resolve issues that the inspector may find. It's very important to connect yourself with inspectors that are forward thinking like that, all right? So I want you to educate your clients and follow the California Association of Realtors advisories. So the buyer is advised to have the property inspected by a professional property inspection service. This is verbatim from your document that your attorneys wrote. Within buyer's inspection contingency period, a licensed building contractor or other professional may perform these services. Now, I may blow your minds right now to some of you that may not know this. There is no licensing required, nor is there any provided in the state of California for a home inspector. Any of you in here ever think about being a home inspector? Good. Both of you are home inspectors right now. Welcome to my club. That's as easy as that. Boom, you're done. Go print some business cards. All right? It's that easy. There's no criteria. Now, forgive me, but would you hire her to do your home inspection knowing that she just became a home inspector right now? You probably would. Well, that backfired.
Gotta start somewhere.
Right.
She's really sweet, so she'll try really hard.
You asked the wrong person.
Well, I appreciate that. But the where I wanted to take this was essentially you're looking for someone that has experience. You're looking for someone that takes their industry, their profession seriously, that is enrolled in an accredited agency like CREA, the California Real Estate Inspection Association, or ASHI, the American Society for Home Inspectors. These agencies require that inspectors have certain amounts of education throughout the year so that they can continue to have their certificate. We'll edit all that out. So that they can continue to remain effective to say that they are an inspector. We are briefly touched on having your property inspected by a general contractor. I was a general contractor, and I know how to do home inspections. They're two different things. General contractors deal with codes. Codes. Likely, you can have a general contractor go through a 1935 era house that's absolutely gorgeous, it's beautiful, and point out all the code violations for your buyer. Wonderful. And none of them have to be addressed. But yet they're just saying, oh, that's code violation. Oh, no, we need to tear that down. Oh, that's no good anymore. Right? It's called grandfathered. If it was installed or put in place with a permit at the time of original construction, and it is still safe to use, it is allowed to remain in place. And many general contractors don't understand the grandfather clauses or the grandfather laws. And there's a lot of other criteria too, by the way. But we as inspectors, we do. So we're looking at that thing. Is it safe? Fine. Keep using it. Also, a professional property inspection service. My business license says that we are a property inspection service. A general contractor's business license typically will say they're a general contractor. So again, we're talking about these layers, right? These layers of protection for you. A definition of a home inspection is a survey and basic operation of the systems and components of a building which can be reached, entered, or viewed without difficulty, moving obstructions, or requiring any action which may result in damage to the property or personal injury to the inspector. We touched on that with the cabinets, the garage, something like that. The purpose of the inspection is to provide the client with information regarding the general condition of the buildings. We also spoke about that as far as the difference between property inspector being generalist as opposed to a specialist. The definition of a home inspection report, it provides written documentation of material defects discovered in the inspected building systems and components, which in the opinion of the inspector are safety hazards, are not functioning properly, or appear to be at the end of their service lives. So you see there's 3 categories there in the opinion of the inspector, and then their material defects. What is a material defect? Per California Civil Code 7195-B, it's a condition that significantly affects the value, desirability, habitability, or safety of the dwelling. That's a material defect. Now this, I will tell you this. This is a good thing to bring up when your client, your buyer, wants them to paint over the walls because they don't like the color. I don't like this color. I want it to be more neutral. I want the seller to paint before I tell them I will buy. It's not a material defect. Okay? It's not that costly. It's not structurally. I mean, it really isn't. Stay focused on those things that are material defects. They significantly affect these items. Style or aesthetic shall not be considered. Paint is aesthetic. The CREA standards of practice, 3 reportable categories. Safety, number 1. Our inspectors are looking at items, are they safe? If I were to inspect this book, I would see if it was safe to operate as a book. It's not safe to operate as a ladder. It's safe to operate as a book, okay? So I'm looking at it from a safety viewpoint. Is it at the end of its useful life? We'll stay with this book. Seems newer to me. All the pages are intact. Seems like it's in good condition. Seems like it has plenty of useful service life left in it. And then items not functioning properly. Is it functioning properly? Is it functioning as a book? Okay. This is an actual picture from an inspection. The inspector was testing the dishwasher and the door blew off. Yeah.
What happens if in the inspection the AC works perfect, but it makes a little noise because it's old? Does the seller have to fix the AC?
No, I mean you would not necessarily. The seller doesn't have to fix anything. The buyer can request anything per your RPA, your residential purchase agreement. The seller can say, no, I'm not going to. It's been working fine for me. The inspector may say, look, it's an older unit. It's working well. It's delivering cold air. It's just making a little squeaking noise. Maybe it should be serviced. You know, have it further addressed or serviced by an appropriate technician. Go ahead.
In regards to this photo, do you guys not run any water anymore, like washing machines or dishwashers?
No, I appreciate that because that would be the wrong thing to do, right? We did actually have, I'm glad you brought it up. The basic question was in regards to this photo, have you guys decided to just stop inspecting dishwashers? And the answer is no, because in my opinion, that's sort of the wrong solution, right? Because then we wouldn't really find out if dishwashers were operating. We did have an inspector once who accidentally left a gas oven on, and he ended up paying for the, increase in the gas bill that month. And because he did that, he decided never to inspect a gas oven again. Well, then guess what happened? The clients would move in and say, my oven's not working. So he started buying ovens. So we kind of had to figure out the more appropriate solution, and that is to figure out a way to test it without being afraid of something like that happening. The inspector didn't cause this. We all have to sort of understand that. This is not, if the inspector were to walk up to a door and open it, everybody would be reasonable to assume that a door is going to open normally and not fall on the floor when you open it. So just because the inspector happened to be the unlucky sap that opened that door and it fell off its hinges doesn't mean he or she caused it, right? You had a question or comment?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to see number 2 again, please.
Items at the end of their useful life. The 5 major systems. These are the 5 systems your inspector focuses on. The plumbing, the electrical, the heating and air conditioning, the foundation, and the roof. Okay, those are the 5 major systems. In any habitable structure, you will find all 5 of those. We have electricity in here. We have a foundation. We have a roof over our heads. We have plumbing. Okay, and we have HVAC. I can feel it. Now, heating is required by law. Air conditioning is not. Okay, so that's why a lot of times close to the beach we don't find houses with air conditioning. General inspections versus specialty inspections. Yes, sir.
Do you guys inspect wall heaters as well?
Yeah. If it's the heat source and it's built in, we would not inspect, let's pretend this was a portable heater that was plugged into the wall. It's not a built-in appliance, we wouldn't inspect it. We probably would say that the only heat in this area appears to be from a portable appliance, and let the client know that in a habitable area it's required to have a permanent heat source that's able to deliver, I think it's 68 degrees to 5 feet off the ground. I think that's what the actual code says. So general inspections versus specialty inspections, we'll move along here quickly. We touched on this a little bit briefly. Your general inspector is not your mold inspector, okay? They have specific inspections for mold and moisture. They are not your chimney inspector. Chimneys. What was I going to say? The three more common specialty inspections, mold, chimney, and sewer. Again, I just want to point out that running sinks, flushing toilets, or looking up a chimney on your back, they can't tell you anything about those items. You can flush a toilet 10 times and not know that the sewer pipe is broken underneath the street because the water still goes away. So you see, you don't really get the actual idea of that component or the system. I know you're all going to do this when you go home now. I want you to go home, and for those of you who do have a fireplace, I want you to lay on your back and get a flashlight and scoot your head into the fireplace, okay? And I want you to look up. You won't see anything. You see what's called a smoke shelf. It's just, there it is. So even the general physical inspector can't tell you what's going on inside the chimney. You actually need a camera to get up there to actually view it.
What is it that you look for when you look? Okay, if you have that accessibility and visual view.
In a chimney?
Yeah, and what is it that you are actually looking for? If it's cracks or...
Yeah, we're looking for basically two things. We're looking for, is the chimney or fireplace system still safe to operate? In other words, are there fire safety issues that if there were a fire burning in the fireplace, could a fire occur or transfer from that containment to the house? The second thing we're looking for is structural safety issues. So again, they're both having to do with safety. One is fire safety, one is structural. Now, there's another reason for you to recommend, if your client says, I should have a chimney inspection, or should I have a chimney inspection? The National Fire Protection Agency, the NFPA, all right? These are the people who, if you looked at a fire extinguisher, you will see an NFPA stamp. These are the accredited body that says, yes, that thing is safe to use for this type of fire or something like that. It's an agency that determines if that will put out that fire. So the NFPA is basically our United States agency that governs and sets the codes and laws and rules pertaining to fire safety in a home or in any structure. They actually say that a level 2 chimney inspection is required upon the transfer of ownership of a home. So again, there's another layer for you right there. An accredited agency, remember we were talking about it a little bit earlier, answer questions by showing them the information from the accredited agency so they can never come to you and say, well, you told me this or you told me that. You just showed them the accredited agency's answer. So the National Fire Protection Agency actually says that. Sewer lines, I think we've talked about that. Other specialty inspections, you guys are all familiar with SB 442, Senate Bill 442. Got signed into law this past year. This is where now it's required that the home inspection has to report on 7 listed items from the California Health and Safety Codes and the American Society for Testing and Materials, 7 safety items of a pool and or a spa. It's mandatory. It is the law. So here's the interesting thing about it. Nothing has to be done about it. It's informational only to the buyer. So essentially we can say, well, there's no fence. There's supposed to be a fence. There's no alarm at the back door leading to the pool. There's supposed to be an alarm. Okay? This is supposed to be a self-closing door, so forth and so on. All of these things, 7 different items. An alarm in the pool. Okay? They're just informational, and it's for the buyer eventually to decide to upgrade or not. But that is a new law. Radon, lead-based paint, asbestos, geological. Asbestos is a tricky animal. How many of you in here know that in 1978 asbestos was no longer allowed to be used? Right, most every hand goes up. That is a lie. Whoa. That's correct. It's a lie. The law basically stated in 1978 that asbestos was no longer allowed to be used in the manufacturing of the acoustic ceiling material, the stuff that you see on the ceiling is popcorn. But in that law, they also allowed the reserve stocks to be used up until 1984. Yeah, whoa, exactly. So anything, in my opinion, and as an inspector, anything up until about 1987, I basically said, hey, if you're concerned about it, you should have it checked. All right? And then beyond that, there really wasn't much of a concern. But they were allowed to use them. We've already talked about what a general physical inspection won't test for. Obviously, mold, wood-destroying ornament. You know, it's a law in the state of California that a general home inspector can't even say the word termite, because that's mandated by a government agency. And those guys are accredited and licensed by the state of California. So we as inspectors can't say termite. There's lots of different wood-destroying organisms. Water is a wood-destroying organism. So are termites, and there's certain ants and bees and things like that. CREA standards of practice, these are limitations, of course. We have to remember, again, just going to the fact that we are generalists, we're not specialists. We can't tell you conditions related to animals. Obviously, if you're an inspector, for me, once I crawled underneath the house, and I got met by Mama Raccoon, and Mama Raccoon said, no, you are not inspecting underneath there, and I agreed with her, and I left. And, of course, that's in my report, and unfortunately, you know, the family of raccoons had to be relocated before I was able to get out there and do the inspection. So how can you assist sellers with a pre-listing inspection? We're going to do this real briefly. I know that there's different viewpoints and ideas on pre-listing inspections, buyer's inspection. We live in a buyer beware state, absolutely. But there's a lot of good reasons to have a pre-listing inspection. There's many agents that I've talked to said, no, I don't think there is. Okay, that's fine. Agents I've talked to often say the only reason to have a pre-listing inspection is if the seller is deciding to fix everything prior to selling it. I say no. I say a pre-listing inspection gives your seller more power because they know what they're selling. You can manage your seller's expectations on pricing the home. You already set an accord, if you will, and bring about trust with a buyer coming in and the seller saying, here's my disclosure package. I had a home inspection. This is what I know. And I'm not fixing anything. Right off the bat, you know, you can definitely do that. Buyers invest a lot of time and money, obviously. Whoop, fair use, get out of there. Being proactive with pre-listing inspections. You can discuss defects with the client, the buyer. Yeah, I found out that my roof, I had it replaced 30 years ago. I was thinking it was still in good shape, but the roofer says it's got maybe 4 or 5 years left on it. So there you go. That's the information. Again, information and communication, you know, serving to help protect everyone. Marketing considerations of your car documents. Your car documents, your attorneys basically say you should consider having a pre-listing inspection. And again, we're talking about layers, right, of protection that help to get the target off your back. So even your car attorneys are basically saying it's probably a good idea. We already talked about disclosures. In summary, inspections provide valuable information. Use the inspection for the inspection. Okay, your client is paying for it. What are they paying for? What are they paying? The company of an inspector, a beautiful aesthetic report, 35 pages of nothing? They're paying for information. That information can lead to the transaction going very smoothly and your buyer getting some credits. All right, let your clients decide on inspections. You have a buyer's inspection election document. Go over it with your client. Let them decide what inspections they feel are necessary. Have your client book their own inspection services. This is just what your car document says. Your car document, your buyer's inspection election document actually says they should choose the provider of the inspection and then they book that inspection. Reduce buyer and seller risk. Obviously, by utilizing this process in your car documents, you are reducing the risk. Recommend pre-listing inspections for your car documents. Do your own visual inspection and stay away from the sort of being very descriptive about what you find, but definitely do a diligent visual inspection. Focus any negotiations on material defects. We touched on that a little bit earlier. Focus. You know the really cool thing about a material defect? Who does it belong to? If a buyer's inspector comes in and discovers a material defect, let's say they discover a hole in the roof, who does that belong to? The seller. The seller owns the house with the hole in the roof. So we've already got common ground. We've already got common ground. Seller can decide to go, I'm not fixing it. Seller can say, I'm taking my house off the market. Seller can go, okay, I'll give you credits or not or whatever. But it is a mutual issue that can be worked out. Control the transaction. Use qualified non-alarming inspectors. Use your preparation checklist that's in the back of that book. We are on your team. You can always call me, and we can get you and your client helped on that. Again, celebrating our 25 years this year. And I want to thank you very much for having us here today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And what a great turnout. Thank you so much.